see. Hopefully Emma will be joining us shortly. But I guess I will start by talking about Flipgrid. And I did see, I think, a couple people that had mentioned that they had used Flipgrid before, or maybe have used it most recently. I'm just kind of curious, those of you who have used Flipgrid for the very recently, what do you think were some of the challenges around using it? Did students seem really receptive to it? Anything like that? And you can unmute or type a response in the chat, whichever you'd like to do.
My name is Paulina Sargent. I teach in Mars Hill. My first language is Spanish, not English, so I have an accent, but it's okay. I just started using Flipgrid because of the remote learning, and I like it, and I want to keep using it even if we go back. You know, there are some kids who are very shy and they don't want to talk face to face, so they can use Flipgrid. I like the feature that you can answer to them using a video too. I can tell them about the pronunciation. But my biggest question, and I was in another meeting a few days ago, it was that privacy, the other ones can see what I see because everything records in the same place. And a lady told me that there is a way in settings that I can change that option.
Yeah,
but
so you...
I just started using it, so I just want to keep learning as much as I can.
Yeah, so the idea with Flipgrid is that you put out, actually, what I should probably do is pull up my, I want to share my screen. I can, makes it a little bit easier.
And many times I don't know what they see. What do the students see? Because I know what I can see.
Yes. So I'm trying to think of the, for those of you who haven't used it before, your grid is essentially like your class or your groups. So however you want to group your students. So if you had a class of students that you wanted to be, and part of it is if you want students to be able to interact. That's one of the great features of it, is students can see and respond to other students' recordings if you want them to. So I have a grid here set up. Hopefully you guys are seeing my screen. And within mine, I only have just one student in there, myself. So you could populate that however you wanted to. So if you had small groups of students, you could do that. If you wanted to have a large group, if you had multiple classes that you wanted to populate in there, you could do all of those things. Within your grid itself, you're going to set up topics, and those are going to allow students to respond. So you might have a video that you put out there and you want them to respond to it. So as might be the case with like a language class, you might do a recording of yourself speaking in that language, and you might want them to respond to the recording. Perhaps in the same language, perhaps you're just kind of checking for comprehension, that they understood what was being said. So just to show you an example of one, you can tell I have done some trainings with PE teachers. So this one I had set up for doing a plank challenge. So in here, I embedded a video from YouTube. So you don't have to create your own content on there if you don't want to. And it doesn't actually even have to be a video. It can be any number of things. Flipgrid is a very video focused app. So one of the pieces, you know, the thinking there is that people would most likely be using, you know, recording videos to respond, and often the prompts are recordings. Edit. So in this one, you can see I've just got a title to it and then the prompt. So whatever I'm asking them to do, and then the video kind of gives them more focus. You can decide the length of the video that the students could respond in. Sometimes you want something that's really short and manageable. And the other thing you might want is something longer, so you can pull it all the way to 10 minutes. And once, let's see if I could delete that one. So this kind of gives you a view of the different tools that you could pull into a Flipgrid session. I haven't used all of these, so I'm not sure which ones work better than others. People, I think, tend to use, you know, they might have a written response an explanation. They might have a video to go along with it, either one that they've recorded of themselves, one they pull from out on the internet. Sometimes people will put maybe a video that they've made somewhere else, or a document maybe that they've created in like Google Docs or something like that. So there are a lot of options of things that you can share through this medium to have them respond to.
John, there's a question in the chat wondering if a YouTube filter would work. You know,
like if you put a YouTube video, is it going to filter like I'm trying to think, one of them is like a cleaning up YouTube for advertisements and stuff like that. I want to say that it does that automatically. We can watch, like, I think the way that it displays, I think it just has, I guess it does. I mean, they could go out to YouTube, so I guess it doesn't have the video. I'll play this one and see when it goes to the end. Because, of course, one of the things, oh, your school blocks YouTube. Yeah, so that might actually be an issue. Yeah, Safe YouTube is one I was thinking of. So it takes out the ads. So Leah, you've used Safe YouTube before, kind of for that whole process?
Yes, we had a virtual learning plan on our website. So any links that we did, we would put through Safe YouTube. So we would be sure that there weren't pictures or ads that were inappropriate for the kids.
Yes.
And it worked really well.
I can do just a little demo, so if people haven't used this before. So I just grabbed the link from that video, pasting it in here. There it is. You can copy. And I guess you just have to try it and see. I haven't been in a school that blocked YouTube and tried running things through other filters. So I don't know if that would get caught along the way or not. That is a good question. All right, I'm going to try. I'm just kind of curious to see how it will look. So delete this one. And add a video. Let's see. So I'm going to do. Is there a URL ad? Is that how you do it? I'm not seeing where the places that you'd add that.
John, maybe one of those tools above where the editing tools are, is that a link thing? Yeah, go ahead. Now paste your URL in the directions, see if that works.
Good thinking.
You might have to.
It would just link to that.
Yeah. Right,
so you probably can't embed it. I don't see like an HTML kind of option. Right. Not to overcomplicate things.
Update, yeah.
So the focus, I mean, you could put some other thing in there, just an image or something like that. But then the students would have to hopefully know to click on. Let's go back and check that piece. Upload a video. Yeah, that looks like it's just wanting a physical video uploaded. Yeah. Well, that answers that question. So yes, you could use something like Safe YouTube to filter video, especially if that's kind of standard protocol stuff that you're used to doing, then it's good to know that you can do that. But just know that it would be pulling the student out to that website. So the challenge there is the student is going to watch it and then they're going to have to go back to Flipgrid. So think kids are a little bit more savvy about things like that, but I know sometimes if people are jumping from one tab to another, it's easy to get kind of blocked out of there. So I'm going to show you. So once you've created something, so just to show you what the recording a response kind of looks like on the student end, when they log in, they essentially are clicking the big green button, big green plus sign, and then they would get this prompt up. They can record, they can add in some different effects and stuff like that. So just to give you a sense, as they're recording, they could be pausing. So if they want to go through and be pulling up other things or demonstrating things, they can do that.
Yeah. John, I think you're supposed to be planking right now.
Yes, I probably should be. I'm reflecting on planks that I've done in the past.
Gotcha.
So I mean, I think it's one of those things when I show people the first time, sometimes they're kind of like, that's it? Like, there doesn't seem like there's a lot to it. On the other end, as a teacher, so this was kind of the initial question was, can students see what other students are recording? So if you wanted them to, which I think that social element is a big part of Flipgrid. So you could allow them on the teacher end, you could set that up so you have to kind of approve all their recordings if you want to, if that's a concern that you might have. I think in a regular classroom setting, sometimes teachers don't have those steps. I mean, if kids are kind of used to doing that, they kind of get in the habit. You're probably not going to run into a lot of inappropriate recordings because it's no secret who they are because it's attached to their account. So I think that's one of those things just to kind of take into consideration. And if you're using this to do work asynchronistically, kids are going to be recording and adding these up at various times. So then you would need to be going in and kind of with whatever frequency going on and approving these videos. So just a couple considerations to be making. But students could watch other students' videos and they can respond and like other kids' videos. It really can be very social. Not knowing what things are going to look like in the fall, this is a good consideration if we're not going back physically or with some limited physical going back, and you want students to maybe just introduce themselves, share something that they're passionate about. And what's nice about this right now is they're at home. They could actually record themselves doing something. I think I gave the example in a session this morning of when I started teaching fifth grade. I had these kids that were super excited because they could do like cartwheels and round-offs, and they just wanted to get up and demonstrate that all the time, which is really distracting. But in a format like this, that's fine that they could just record themselves. And I'm sure there are going to be lots of kids that have acquired all kinds of new talents during this time period. So definitely a consideration for building your classroom environment for next year. And even if we do go back, it might be nice to use something like this just to reach out to families so kids can start making those connections or reconnecting over the summer. So just a couple considerations of how people might use Flipgrid. Any questions? So you can, I guess the other thing would be that this ties really nicely into like I was saying before, Seesaw and Google Classroom are both really popular LMS systems. So if you're using either of those, and you might kind of say, well, I'm already using Seesaw, why would I use Flipgrid? So it is something that's a little different. There is a certain level of functionality that's similar to Seesaw, but I wouldn't just turn it down outright because it's kind of like, well, kids can already record stuff in Seesaw. It is a slightly different platform. And I think the ability to kind of like do some markups and like other people's videos and just the format of it is very simple. So I think that's the learning curve is just so small that I really think for what it is one of those things that most teachers should be kind of familiar with and using, at some point in time. So I guess we'll open the floor. Did anybody have any questions?
John, quick question.
Yep.
Do me a favor, click the share button there and see what happens. What's that?
So the share, so I had said
Okay.
Google Classroom before, so it's got a nice button so you can just share it over, but you can generate a QR code. So a lot of times in a physical classroom, teachers would be maybe having QR codes up that students could scan, and then you could just record their Flipgrid right there. It might make more sense now to be just copying and pasting the link. Just click copy, and then it's copied, and you can put it on there. So Flipgrid is free. So it is free. It's always free. I don't know if they have like a certain pay structure or kind of limitations that.
I'm pretty sure Flipgrid is relatively committed to remaining a free platform.
Yeah. I don't know what their business model is, but I enjoy it.
There's a question. Can you please run through each button function briefly?
I can do that. So active means it's an active, in this case, topic. So it's an active topic that you have that students, if they had the code to get into that topic, they could interact with. If it's frozen, then you're kind of freezing it so people can't, put up any more content that way. And if it's hidden, then students can't see it. So frozen, I believe that they could still see it, but they wouldn't be able to do their own recordings. And then hidden just means that they can't see it. And then under the actions, some of these I do not know entirely. Well, I mean, edit, record, those seem pretty self-explanatory. Topic guest is if you want to kind of bring somebody in from outside your regular classroom system. So like a guest speaker or commenter or something like that. The Disco library, people have shown it to me before, and I'm kind of spacing on what it's like, but I think it's more of like a public sharing type feature. And I think these other ones are fairly self-explanatory. And then this is the edit button. And then this one allows you to move it up and down in your list. And you can, of course, search topics. So if you have labeled if you have more than just 5 plank challenges and needed to search for your different topics, then you could do that there. Looking in the chat. Yeah, so I think it's one of those things like kids they really like it. I found that in my time in education I think YouTube's a big part of it. Kids are just remarkably less reserved about recording themselves, which sometimes is a challenge. But for something like this, I mean, you really can leverage this technology and get great responses from students. I've seen kids that really struggle with kind of demonstrating their math that they're doing, but they're really good at talking things out. And for a teacher, it's difficult to find that time to sit next to a child and have them explain out their whole process. But for this platform allows you to capture all of those moments that you can access at another time. And certainly for like an asynchronous model. So if your students are getting on at different times, then they can be producing this content at all times of the day. And if you're back in a classroom setting, you can still use this. So I think that's another thing that I really like about this. I've mostly seen it used in a classroom setting, but obviously the time that we're in right now, these are the type of tools that are fantastic because you can pivot from one to the other very easily. So definitely a tool to consider adding to your toolkit. Any final questions? So since we're at almost 3:30, and I've noticed that Emma has survived traffic, so maybe we'll let her take over the Padlet portion of the session.
Yes, so a trip that should have taken 1 hour there and 1 hour back turned into a 3-hour trip because of construction. So I was like scrambling to get back on time. So thank you, John, for
A
picking that up.
3-hour tour, you say?
Yeah, basically. Which, I mean, it felt like a road trip with today's environment. I feel like I haven't driven my car in like an eternity. So, okay, yeah, so I will take over sharing. And I'm just gonna put Padlet up. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Padlet, so maybe I'll start by just kind of going over its functionality briefly, and then we can kind of talk about specific interests and questions. So Padlet, I like to describe as a dynamic virtual corkboard. So anything that you might tack up on your, in-class bulletin board, Padlet is a great replication of that. It's great for collecting resources and information. And so from our session earlier today, I actually have a great sample that everyone built. So this is, you can even tell I used the corkboard background. This is what a Padlet looks like when it actually has a little bit of information in it. There's all sorts of things that you can do with it once you get it going, but I will show you what it looks like to go through that process of making one. So when you're making a Padlet, you have different layout options. I think some of these are particularly helpful depending on what you're doing. The timeline one is pretty cool, and the map. One of the ones that I use pretty often is the shelf one because it lists things in rows so you can add topics. And then there's like the canvas where you can put things anywhere. That one's kind of fun because then people can drag their things wherever they want. Once you create your Padlet, it kind of starts out with some of this like template stuff to show you like where it shows up. So you see My Sweet Padlet up here. So you know that once you replace this information, it's going to be, oh, I'm trying to type in my keyboard that's not plugged in. Awesome Padlet. Ooh. Made with love. And then I've got to move the icons. I can add an icon to it if I want to. There's all sorts of things in here, little emojis basically. When you do that, I'm gonna just, all the Zoom windows keep getting in the way. When you add your icon, it shows up right here. So you could put a theme, like if you had a specific theme. You can change the back end. So you see it says Emma Marie Banks because that's my username on Padlet, and then it has all this, but I could change it to, I did it again. I need to get that thing out of here. English 101 could be my back end if I wanted it to be. I can change the background. Maybe it's fall and I want to have a fall theme to it. I can change the font. I can change it to where it has a dark color scheme or a light one. You can change it so that it shows the author's name or it doesn't. You can have it so that there's comments. You can make it so that somebody could put a heart on it and like it, or upvote or downvote, give it a rating, or you can even set it up to where it will give a numeric grade. Some of these, the content filtering these are really nice features. So you can have it so that you have to approve the post before it shows up. You can also have it so where if somebody tries to use a bad word, it's automatically going to replace it with friendly emojis, which can be helpful. And then once you get to that point, you can click start posting, and then you can hit this pink plus button down here, or you can double click anywhere on the screen, and then you can start putting things in here. Awesomeness for my new Padlet. And then there's all sorts of things you could do. You can upload a file from your computer or a document. You could enter a URL from a website. And then there's this whole list of things. You could put in a Google search. You could capture your screen, put in a voice recording, you could draw, you could add a place, you could link to a different Padlet. There's all sorts of things. You could embed a YouTube video in here by putting in the link. So if I wanted to, let's see, I want to put in a playlist about educational technology. So I can go, oh, I was already there. Can click that in there, save, takes a moment to load it. And then that pops up right there. And you can have it pop up right in your screen and watch it. Okay, so then when you want to share it, there's these buttons up here to share. You can have your Padlet be secret so that the only way that they can see it is with a link. You can change it so that they can write on it or not. You can add members directly so that you can keep it locked down. And then there's all sorts of ways you can share it out. You can share it on your Google Classroom or via email or embed it. And then if you want a static version of it, you could save it as an image, print it out, or if there's data in it, you could save it as a CSV so that you get some of the text information. This feature right here is the Remake feature. When you actually click this, it will make a copy of your Padlet. See, it says Remake of Awesome Padlet. So it's just going to make a copy of it. So if you had a really awesome format and you wanted to change it out, you could totally do that. If I go back to my Padlet dashboard, you can see that we have the Make a Padlet. We just did that. So if I wanted to join somebody else's Padlet, I could click on this button and type in the link for it. Or another really awesome feature that Padlet has is this gallery. And these are Padlets that people have created and posted publicly as templates. So you can get in here and you can create your own remake of any of these Padlets, wow. So let's see, what do I want to click on? Let's Fact or Fiction, let's check it out. So if I wanted to remake this, I could just click on the remake button and change it to adjust it. If I really like the design of it or whatnot, I could check it out. Oh, that's funny. So that's kind of a really basic, quick overview. I will say that Padlet offers 3 or 4 Padlets for free, and then they have like a paid functionality where you can get as many as you want. I usually just shuffle through my 3 or 4 and delete them or archive them as needed and just only keep a few active. That has seemed to work out really well for me so far. So I think it depends on what you're using it for as to whether or not you really would feel the need to actually pay for it. It always has the 4 free Padlets, or the 3, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4. I can find out real quick. Hang on. Let's see if it'll let me make a new one. Yeah, so it looks like they've upgraded it to 4. It used to be 3. So you get 4 for free, and then you could pay for more if you wanted that. But usually you could kind of juggle and shuffle them around. Okay, so does anyone have any questions about Padlet?
So we had the question of how do you normally use Padlet with Google Classroom? So if you were trying to make the two work together, what would make sense?
Yeah, so if I had a Google Classroom and I wanted to kind of collect, I mean, you could use Padlet for a whole host of things, but one of the things that I prefer to use it for in a virtual format is would be like crowdsourcing information. So if you have like a topic that you want students to research and you want them all to post, you know, like a blurb about it, like what they learned, or you want them to each pick a different, you know, country to research and kind of develop a post on that, then that's kind of like putting it all on your bulletin board. Like you've got everybody's thing so that everyone can see it and it's a shared resource. And then what you would do is you just click on that Google Classroom button. I can go through that process real quick actually.
And can you, so certainly you can make it open so people can get, like anyone could get on there and add content. Can you lock it down so students have to be logged in?
Yes. So right now, this Padlet is saved as secret. So the only way that somebody can get it is if I give them the link to it or I add them as a member to it. There's this button right here to change privacy, and then you can either put a password on it, you can make it private so that only you can see it, or whoever you add to it, and then you can have it be public. And then you can also change the permissions. You can make it so they can only read it, or they can edit fully, or they can only write. And so if I wanted to put this in my Google Classroom, I click on that button and it's gonna be like, okay, which class do you want to put it in? I've got my Poetry 1 class. So let's see, I think I will ask a question. Let's see. I don't know, guys, I'm drawing a blank. Let's say really awesome thing. I'm sorry, it's 3:40 on Thursday. And then you can put in, you know, your instructions. You can make sure that it's, you know, either multiple choice or short answer. You can assign points to it. You can kind of let them know, you know, research this question and post to the Padlet. And then you could ask it, or you can, you know, schedule it, save it as a draft, however you want to. But it puts the link to the Padlet right there. So when you go and you click ask, it's going to let you view it. What's a really awesome thing? And it's going to tell me I'm on the teacher view right now. So it's going to show me that I have this assignment out there. From the student view, I think I should be able to show that. I think I'm added into this as a student. Yeah. So in my classwork, what's a really awesome thing? Research this and post to the Padlet. And there's this awesome Padlet right here. And so that's kind of one way that you might leverage it. Depending on how you're using it, you might want to make it an assignment. You might want to make it a discussion. There's all sorts of ways that you could integrate it into your Google Classroom, but that's definitely one way. I really like how the flow to Google Classroom is really smooth. That's one of the features I really enjoy about Padlet. Are there any other questions regarding that? I see, do students need an account with Padlet to comment? No, they do not. They just need the link. That's another really great feature about Padlet, is that you can just share out that link and they can contribute to it based on the permissions that you set. So if you have it set up so that they can write, then they'll be able to write without an account.
Emma, can I share a Padlet?
You absolutely can.
Demonstrate one that I shared the other day. So one of my favorite teachers.
Oh, yes, I loved this one.
L'Esperanza in Farmington. So she had put this Padlet together. So you can see it has all these different sections. And so she's got like all of her morning meetings set up in there. And her videos are all embedded right within this. So in terms of, she's a first grade teacher. So in terms of ease of access for parents and students, that was her thinking, is, you know, rather than leveraging something like Seesaw, although she does use Seesaw a lot, and I know she was using it for certain things, she felt like having this place where she was able to put all of her stuff made it much easier for her families. So I think this is a really great example of how you can use that. And she was able to get other people on, other like specialists were able to get on and share things. So I think this
John,
is, yep.
John, can you share that out for us to view only as like, are you okay with that, or you want to ask her?
She's okay with it, and
okay.
I put it in my newsletter but I will put it in the chat feature on the side there.
I think this is a great example. One of the things that John and I like to emphasize is to be purposeful with your use of different tools. Yeah. And so sometimes a learning management system is more than what you need. You know, if you're trying to kind of keep things simple and, you know, this would work for your needs, you have the ability to put grades in here if you set it up that way. So, you know, I always say that, you know, if you don't need all of the functionality of a learning management system, then you could use something like Google Drive folders, or a Padlet is another really great example, because depending on your grade level and how, you know, deep into it you need to get with them, then something like this might work really well for the purposes that you have.
And I think in terms of, if you're thinking about connecting with students and families, one of the things to always be thinking about is that kind of ease of access, so they're able to you know, get the information that they need when they need to get it. And I actually emailed her back and I said, my favorite thing about this is when I scroll through your read alouds, it's like your smiling face every single time. And I was saying, just for, I think for kids, that would be so comforting right now, just to be able to not just watch a picture of, I mean, watch a video of your teacher reading, which is great in and of itself. But I mean, just a lot of this presentation, it's a very user-friendly interface, but it's a very welcoming, personable interface as well. So, yep.
So Josh has asked, I noticed she writes read with Scholastic's permission. If we're using published content like this, how do we make sure we have that permission?
So this is kind of a separate issue. And I can share in just a moment. I'll have to probably hunt for that link a little bit. But right now, a lot of book publishers had eased some of their restrictions on read alouds and things like that. They have kind of individual asks of what they wanted schools and educators to be doing. Generally, the big thing was to give credit to the publisher of whatever the book you were reading was. And sometimes they had some other pieces in there. And for the most part, they wanted things to be on kind of a closed, thank you for posting that, Emma. But they wanted things to be in more of a closed setting. So I think if schools were putting it on like their school Facebook, like certain publishers probably wouldn't want you to do that. It kind of, I mean, it's traditionally, it's kind of a gray area, and it was almost like it became more gray during this time period. So I don't think that the, you know, publishers are going to be sending the copyright police after people, but I think the idea is just that they want people to be, you know, respecting that, you know, they own the rights to those things. And if you're reading, just to be crediting the publisher and following their permission guidelines. So that School Library Journal website that we linked in the chat, and you can certainly just look up School Library Journal about read alouds, and you'd be able to find, you know, probably the most up-to-date information around that. I don't know how that's going to be impacted by this summer. Some of them had, you know, cutoffs at like the end of your school year or at the end of June or something like that. But I think with a lot of products, some of those things have been extended. So you might just, that probably is just the best resource to check, because they've been updating that continuously.
So Tatiana asked, I'm exploring this and see the video function. Could this be used as a Flipgrid? And the answer to that is that it is similar, but I would not say that it's the same. Flipgrid has a few, like a little bit of functionality that Padlet probably is, I would say, a little bit more wonky in. I think that if your primary purpose would be to use it like Flipgrid, I would just recommend using Flipgrid. I think that this is a best fit if you have like multiple types of media and things of that nature. Not saying you couldn't use it that way, but I think that Flipgrid would be a more effective approach if that's the way that you would be using it. Any other questions about Flipgrid or Padlet? We've got about 10 minutes, so if anyone has anything, feel free to chime in.
So I will say that this session was much different than our previous session.
I just think it would be great if we could, you know, hands-on, if we start checking, probably more questions will come out when we start clicking and creating things, but it's really neat to see, because I have been seeing Padlet and I already have ideas in my brain how I'm gonna use it, and I thought everybody was gonna be a foreign language teacher, but I'm glad to see the perspective for other people.
Yeah.
New ideas too. Thank
And
you.
Flipgrid does, I probably can find the link to their website, but Flipgrid has really great PD. I've kind of jumped on and viewed some of the recent sessions, and they've catered things recently to kind of remote learning for obvious reasons. But if you're interested, they have, actually their setup is kind of similar to what Emma and I use, where they have one person that's demoing things and the other person that's like manning a chat the couple times that I got on. And I thought it seemed like a really effective, way to do support for your consumers. So I would definitely consider looking that up if you're interested in doing that with Flipgrid. I don't know if Padlet does the same type of PD, but they've been around for so long. I'm sure if you look around on the internet, you'd be able to find some good tutorials on Padlet.
So Tatiana asked, where do I find the basic setup in Padlet? Do you mean to sign up for Padlet, or do you mean to create a Padlet? To create one. Okay, hang on. I'll show you where that button is. Okay, so if I go back to just the padlet.com, I'm already logged in. So I've already created an account. I'm already logged in. That's this pink button right here, is to make a Padlet. And then you would select which type of a layout you want and go through that whole process. Yeah, and John just dropped the link for the Flipgrid PD. And I'm going to drop in a link for, it's a really great article about 30 ways that you can use Padlet in a classroom. Oh, yeah. I love that resource because there are just so many things that I would have never thought of, like making a Padlet to celebrate somebody's birthday and things of that nature. Like I just wouldn't have ever thought of some of those things, but they're just really phenomenal suggestions. Tatiana asks if you can modify a Padlet once it is created. You can modify almost every aspect of a Padlet once it has been created, except for the layout. So that first choice that you make of either a timeline or a map or however you set it up, you cannot change that once you've created it. So you'd have to create a totally new one. And that includes in a remake. When you remake a Padlet, it keeps that same template. So if you want to remake it that far, you have to start over.
Do you know if you can archive Padlets to make room for free again and then do that kind of thing? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that is something I probably should have actually mentioned. Here, let's share my screen again. So
I think somebody had mentioned that in the chat. So you can have so many live ones, right?
Yes, exactly. So if I wanted to archive this one, I just clicked archive and go in here, and now it's in the archive. It looks like there might be a limit of 4 in the archive as well. So maybe you can only have a total of 8 at any one time, but archiving them does allow you to have that ability to kind of juggle a few more. Leah asks, what is the gallery? So that was that part right there where you can find the pre-made Padlets that people have posted for public. So that was where we saw this fact or fiction one that we could remake. There's a whole host of free Padlets that you can like remake and check out or contribute to. Some of these are just, one of these I thought was really cool. This was on here last time. These are like, it's a timeline of planets. So you've got the scroll bar down at the bottom. You can go left or right and get a description and each of the planets and stuff. So some of these are really cool. I like the gallery particularly just for like brainstorming, trying to think about what you might do with it. that's a really great place to kind of get some inspiration. Oh, that's a good question. Dan asks, when you make a flip grid, are you making one for each class or each level? So for instance, if he teaches 3 classes of Spanish, do you associate a student's email? Oh, okay, so there's 2 questions there. If you associate 3 classes of Spanish too, would you make a class for each one? And do you associate the student's email to Flipgrid?
So with Flipgrid, they don't have to have an email. They could set up accounts, but it's one of those things that you can, if they have Google email, they can just log right in through that. Which
I think
makes
when
it really
when I
easy.
make one, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think when I make one the first time after you create the assignment, it says, do you want to share it in Google? And if you have already a list of your students, for example, Spanish 2, you just connect, you just type there and it just mail it to the G4 Education email that they have, to the school email that they have. And the link goes to the Google class.
Yes. So if you have classroom set up, I mean, it works really nicely together. But you can set up, I mean, you can set them up individually if you want to, so you wouldn't have to use that Google Classroom necessarily. But if they have Google accounts, certainly the logging in part of it is really easy as well. Another Padlet that I wanted to share that I kind of, I don't think I've ever shown this to Emma before. I think this is one that she probably would think was cool, is this one that shows different ways that you can, if you've ever used the app Soundtrap before, it's kind of like GarageBand, but it's web-based. But these are all different examples of, and I'll actually drop this link in the chat. These are all different examples of ways to use that app for different content areas. So just some kind of ideas. So this is the person doing this, it was just sort of crowdsourcing different ideas for how to use that app. So lots and lots of ideas. So if you're curious about doing anything with audio recording, I mean, this was collected for Soundtrap, but I mean, you could use it for anything really that collects audio. So I thought this was a really cool way to crowdsource thing at I saw somebody using this at a conference and they shared it out. Said, put your ideas in here.
Very cool. I love that it's color coded too. It really helps with the organization.
Yep.
All right, so we've got just a couple minutes left. Does anybody have any final thoughts or questions that they want to share?
Thank you very much. I feel like I have a lot of homework to do. I feel like I had to navigate many things. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, of course. There are so many tools out there, so definitely don't pressure yourself when you find a new one that you don't know about. I would say almost daily I learn about a new technology tool that I had never heard of before. So it definitely is a regular occurrence. All right, well, we will be doing the module 2 of Remote Learning 101 next week. We'll have 3 parts again, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We'll also be doing 2 more help sessions next week. One is Google Apps and the other I'm gonna draw a complete blank on. I think maybe it's presentation tools.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. Yeah, so those will be at 11 Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then 3 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So feel free to come back and join us again.
Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Bye.